My name is Henry Thomas Pooley, Pooley, but I'm commonly known as Herry, Harry, Herry Pooley.
And what is your birthday?
My birthday is the 13th of the November, 1930.
Could you repeat? What is your birthday?
13th, the 11th,
Mm-hmm.
that's November, 1930, which makes me 89, my next birthday.
89. You
Yeah.
look great. What is the secret?
Work.
Work? What do you work?
Well, I always reckon that the body is a machine, and God designed a machine, and we've designed machines after God. And machine is made to work. If it doesn't work, it deteriorates, falls apart at the, say for instance, a car, chemical action, the motor, deterioration of tyres, batteries, everything. So the car is no good.
But you're retired.
Beg pardon?
You are retired now, right?
I wouldn't say retired. I'm still doing all the repairs around my house. I'm a bit of a handyman. I built my house. It's a 6-bedroom cavity brick home. And
You built it? You built it? You build your own home?
Yes, I was a subcontractor. My trade is a mechanic, diesel mechanic, fitter. But I might as well start at some point. Where would you like me to start?
I have a series of questions. Tell me about where were you born?
I was born in Brisbane here in 1930 at what was then the Lady Bowen Hospital, which now I believe is Anzac House.
And when did you graduate high school?
I didn't go to high school. I went home to my hometown, which was Tenterfield in New South Wales, and from there my father was a ganger on the roads and actually worked with Errol Flynn, the actor, but he wasn't known so well as an actor then. And Dad was a salesman for Chrysler. He travelled around a bit, and they shifted down to Brisbane. But while he was down there, he married my mother, Mary Ellen Pooley, and that was about 1928. He was an ex-serviceman from the British Army and in the Merchant Navy, and he left his ship in 1920 in Australia.
Yeah.
Signed off,
Mm-hmm.
and he ended up he settled down in Brisbane, and as I said, he was growing tobacco at one stage too. And when I was born in 1930, I shifted around a lot, and he was always either rich one moment, had a beautiful home, or we had poor home. And during the Depression years, the 1930s, sometimes it was very hard because a man to retain a job, he had to go from one town to another town, and then he'd draw rations like sugar, flour, tea, and the sergeant would say, right, you've got your rations now, tonight I want you on the train to the next town, because he never got no more rations till he get to the next town.
Yeah, it's a very difficult time to live.
Oh, it was a terrible time.
Yeah. So when did you join the military?
I joined the military when I was in Brisbane here on the 15th of August 1951.
And was Army?
Army, yes.
Mm. And where did you get the basic military training?
Here at Enoggera. We spent 3 months at Enoggera, and then we went from here down to Victoria, which was Puckapunyal, and lived in tents. Or we did graduate to a tin shed once, and coal running water from the Goulburn River in the winter. And we trained there until May 1952. and then we were flown by Qantas, and we stopped at Hong Kong, and actually we went as tourists by Qantas, so we stayed in the best hotel in Hong Kong, which was a Peninsula Hotel.
Yeah. And when did you arrive in Korea? When did you arrive in Korea?
I arrived in Korea after training in Japan. They found out I'd done a signaller's course in Australia, and I was on draft to go to Korea, and they found that there was 3 signallers. That was my 2 mates and myself, and they had the mates' names. They didn't have mine, see, and I thought, well, I'm going in the morning. It's going to be hard to catch me if you don't get me before. And both my mates looked at each other and stepped out of the ranks and said, Pooley's his name, Sergeant. You're not going anywhere without us. See, so I had to go back, and we had to do another run over on a refresher course as a signaller. And
Where?
In Haramura in Japan.
Yeah.
And that was at the Battle Training School, which was a pretty hard school. They used to use live ammunition all the time to allow for percentage of casualties, you know. And we did our training, and then we had to go back to Hiro, which was the base camp, and in Japan. And we eventually went on draft, and I got to Korea in either late August or early September in 1952.
Okay.
And
where did you arrive in Korea?
That's around late August, early September.
Where? Where did you arrive?
Busan.
Okay.
And that was my first introduction to Korea.
What was your unit?
My unit was the 1st Battalion, Royal Australian Regiment.
Mm-hmm.
It was part of the 1st Commonwealth Division.
And what company?
I was in headquarter companies first as a signaller.
Signaller?
A signaller, yes, a radio, radio man signals, repair the wires if they got knocked out. And but at the time I was working, my job was working a switchboard, and I didn't find it very exciting. Mm-hmm. And I got myself transferred to a rifle company where one of my friends was in D Company. But when I got there, he was in 12 platoon, I got sent to 10 platoon, one section. And we only had 4 people in it because they'd had quite a few casualties, and we were down to 4 people. So I went there, and my first patrol, when I went down and we were being briefed, we were going on ambush patrol, and the sergeant come to my name, he says, "Oh, Pooley." I said, "Yes, Sergeant." He says, "You're an ex-sig, aren't you?" I said, "Yes, Sergeant." I knew it was coming. Mm-hmm. So he said, "Here's the radio, go and get the codes and get yourself ready." And that was my first introduction to...
Where was it?
That was... I first joined Korea at a place called Yongdong. You overlooked the Shamazon Valley. It was a big valley that ran due south, and it was the main attack route for Genghis Khan, all the armies in the past,
Was Imjin River around?
Yes, the Imjin River went around in front of us, and where we were on Yongdong, we were on a hill, and we looked straight forward, and you could see the river going through around. It was a huge minefield. And on the left-hand side of us, we had the American 1st Marine Division. And on the right-hand side of us, we had the Royal Fusiliers. We're on a hill there, somewhere around about 159, I think it was. Anyway, we spent about 3 weeks there before we joined the battalion. And we went in joined the actual battalion on the 1st of November. When just after Princess Patricia's got badly knocked about on the hill. No, not the Patricia, it was the RCRs, Royal Canadian Regiment. They got badly knocked, nearly got overrun, and all the defensives were blown in and everything. And and we had to find our own way out into the minefields, and we lost quite a few people with stepping on mines because the British and the Australians were usually pretty explicit. If you laid a minefield, there was a map of it. But the Americans and the Canadians sometimes, they just laid them indiscriminately and they'd have a gap through them. But if the shell fire, they knew where the gap was because you'd been in one position for a while and they had it zeroed into within a metre, the Chinese, and the Chinese were very good artillerymen and very good mortarmen. And they were very good fighters actually, and we got on, believe it or not, we had a lot of respect for them. No respect for the North Koreans, I'm afraid, but we had a lot of respect for the Chinese because some of them didn't want to be there, and we had sort of an unspoken truce with them that we wouldn't fire on their stretcher parties and they wouldn't fire on ours, you know. Whereas with the American, that they used to fire on the Chinese stretcher parties. So we gained a bit of respect from the Chinese. The fact that
that's very interesting to know.
Well, it was just like sometimes when it comes down the man in the front line, and you're the ones that's going to suffer. And when you go day after day for 2 months in one spot, and you're being shelled at night time, mortared, sometimes you'll be under attack, you'll be going out, we're on a hill called Kolwak San. It was, the British called it 355. 355 was the height of it. It was called Little Gibraltar.
Yeah.
It was something similar to the British thought to the Gibraltar in the Straits in the Mediterranean.
So you were there around?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're on top of the hill. And
what hill?
Yeah, on top of this
355?
hill, 355.
Okay.
And the trenches, the main trench, was 9 feet deep. You couldn't climb out of that unless you went up into a firing step where the little weapon pits were. And that's where you stood duty, you know. And we joined them in the winter, and we still had summer boots. And I got put on a charge for wearing winter boots. They issued the winter boots, and sometimes during the daytime, this was before we went on the hill, we'd have to go back and dig the fortifications for the second line of defence. And we were in the shade, you see, and there was a bit of snow there. My feet were like ice, so I thought, feet cold, warm boots, put them on. And the officer put me on a charge because he said, the army didn't reckon it was winter yet, you've got to wait until a certain date. The army says winter gets here the 15th of September, you can wear them. So I wore them anyway.
So you must have involved in a lot of different kinds of battle there?
Sorry?
The kind of battle that you fought?
I haven't fought much in the way of battles at all. Whether I thought I was unlucky, I never made contact with the enemy. I saw them. We walked in around the Chinese lines at night time, but the Chinese had a lot of respect for us and they didn't attack us much, especially D Company. D Company had a very good reputation, and we'd go out and sit there for 4 hours waiting to ambush the Chinese. They used to be down in the hill, 227, in front of us, see? And so I went out on a number of patrols, and listening patrols, standing patrols, but it was only about a fortnight after I got there, and we were on the right flank of Hill 345, and next to us was the Republic of Korea Capital Division. That was the President's Division, and they were on the right flank of us, right alongside us here, and on the left-hand side was, who was on the left-hand side now? I'm trying to think. I think it was 2nd Battalion that joined us then. No, 3rd Battalion was there, that's right, 3rd Battalion. And we stayed there I stayed there, I got hit with a shell. My bunker was on top near the skyline, you know, and they had a Centurion tank dug in here. There was a Canadian tank first, a Sherman, and then they replaced it with a Centurion from one of the British Hussars, you know. and they were trying to hit this tank, and our bunker was to the right-hand side of the tank and about 30 metres back. And this day we just walked into it, three of us, and one man was sitting there and one man was sitting there, and I was up about 2 feet off the ground because I came there as the fifth man there, and there was no room, so I had to shift all the packs out of this little hole here and make my bed in there. And actually, thinking back, it saved me because I was sitting on there just putting some stuff under my bunk, and next minute the air just, I didn't hear any noise, I just felt the ears compressed as if somebody had hit me underwater, punched me, and I got slammed down the floor. And when I looked up, I was buried, half buried except for a little tiny bit of daylight.
You must have lost your life. You might have lost your life there.
Oh, well, the shell only hit about 4 metres away from me, 4 feet away from me. No more than 2 metres.
Were you scared?
No, I'm a pretty practical sort of person. I was scared beforehand, but I was a bit rather dazed, because the thing was so, a 5-inch shell, 122, close to being 5 inches. It's like the forward gun on a destroyer. And anyway, I headed over the hole. I couldn't feel anything wrong with me, but I headed over the hole and I could hear a voice crying out for help. And I went to get out through this hole, and where this chap had been sitting on the bunk, I looked down and the first thing I saw was a white singlet. And I put my hand down and I looked, and I put my hand where his head would be, but his head was gone. It blew his head off, and they forced the explosion, must have seared the jugular and everything. There was no blood, just the singlet was pure white. Anyway, I crawled over him to go to help with this other. I couldn't do nothing for him.
What was his name?
His name was Dave Dollard. I never ever got back to talking to his parents because I didn't know him a lot very well, and I didn't like the idea of, I thought it was better these parents didn't know that he died in that manner, he lost his head. So I just kept it quiet to myself. It's the first time I told anybody. And I thought it's bad enough them knowing they've lost their son. He was a fine young man, actually, a lovely man. He would have gone a long way, but he never got a chance. And the chap on the left-hand side, Mickey Lynch, his name was. Mickey Lynch, yeah. And he got one ankle blown off. Comes from down Victoria. I don't know if he's still alive.
But you were not wounded.
Pardon?
You were not wounded. You were not wounded. You were not wounded.
I don't know. I didn't feel nothing. I looked with no blood on me. But my ears were ringing like mad. And I went outside and I could see Mickey here, and he's trying to have to help me. All the timber was laying down. I was trying to pull it out when somebody come in and grabbed me and took me out and put me outside. And then they found me wandering along the square line afterwards, asking to be shot by a sniper, but I didn't. They didn't. Anyway, I was evacuated that night about 12 o'clock at night by a jeep that come up the back of the hill, the mountain. They couldn't move up there during the daytime because the Chinese could see parts of it. And they, the chap that took me out was actually my mate that I was waiting for as a signaller. And when he got there was no more, they didn't want signallers, so they made a driver out of him. He ended up driving the ambulance. And I don't remember him at all taking me out. But Dave's body was on that stretcher, without no head, couldn't find it. Anyway, and I was on this stretcher. And they sent me out for a rest because our section had been very, very badly hit before, and we were working a lot more hours, trying to fill in to cover it, the other men. And you didn't get much sleep, about 1-2 hours sleep a night. And after a few days, you know, we got there beginning. This was about my birthday was the 13th. It must have been the 17th of November, because I survived my birthday when I got hit. And I went out down for a rest, and they never even took my shirt off or anything. They just said, "How are you?" I said, "I don't think there's any. I'm not hit. I can't see anything." And anyway, I went down to Inchon, which was just a little fishing village then. And you come down the hill, you know, into the fishing village. And I spent a week there, no money, and they said you can get drunk as
Where did you stay? In MASH unit or in the hospital? Or
No, in a rest camp. A little rest village. They sent me out for a rest.
Yeah.
It was called a rest village, where they had, you know, wounded soldiers that come out of hospital. They went down there, and then before you went back to the line. So I spent a week there, and then I went back, and I had a job in the queue store.
I'm sorry?
I had a job in the quartermaster store at A Echelon, or B Echelon, I forget which. Anyway, I used to issue clothing to the troops when they come out of the line. So it was a very safe place, and I used to put my feet up in front of a Canadian stay. It was lovely, no patrols, no ambush, nothing, no shelling. And I spent about 2 weeks, I think, there, and or over a week. And they said to me they couldn't send me back up. I wanted to go back up to my unit, and they couldn't send me because I had no winter gear. There's a shortage of winter gear, and they were waiting for it to come from Japan. Anyway, when it turned up, I said I'd go, and they said, "Oh, well, look, we'll promote you to a corporal here. You're doing a good job. You can stay here if you want to." And I had to make a decision then. I didn't really want to go up back on that hill again, but I thought, well, if I don't, I'll regret it in lots of ways the rest of my life. And I said to him, "No, I think I've got to go back." And he said, "I think you're bloody mad." Anyway, I went, and when I got up there, as soon as I joined my unit, went in, "You're stupid or something. You had a chance to get out." And I said, "Well," anyway, I went on for about another, that was the first time, the 15th, that was November. December the 15th, a friend of mine, a chap I made it up with, were both reinforcements, you see. I didn't know the other men at all in the battalion because they'd been there from original. And we were what they call K-Force. We only joined for 2 years because they couldn't get enough people to join the Australian Army.
Yeah.
And we were very short-handed, so they dropped the recruiting age, and we joined for 2 years, you see. And we spent nearly a year wasted here getting there. And when we, am I talking too much?
No. When did you leave Korea?
I left Korea, I was just getting to that. This day, I was just come back from having lunch. You went down to a kitchen at the back, and you come up, and there was an observation post, an OP we called it, just to the right of my hoochie here. The main trench went along, and there's a trench come in here and turned, and there's a little hoochie. Uchi, the Japanese word, I think it's UCHI. They call it HUTCH now. It was just a few rafters, you know, and it had already been hit by a mortar, and the sand used to drizzle through, and I didn't like it much. I didn't want to be buried again. And Don, he lived just outside in the forward trenches up against the wall. Anyway, him and I were there talking, and next minute it was a bang just outside, and I thought it was a self-propelled gun that they had in the tunnel in 227, which was when we walked out of our hoochie at night time. We had to pull blankets down so it wouldn't let any light out because she shined straight out on the 227 where they had an observer, and we thought it was an SP because they're flat trajectory, you know, and you don't hear the thing go off. You only either hear it here and you're still alive, or you don't hear it and you're dead. Anyway, one shot come in, And in between, the sergeant turned up with 3 reinforcements. And was 5 of us in this little area here, see? And he said, righto, Pooley, he said, you can show them the ropes. He said, I'm off, I've got to check the others. So he left, and I looked at Don Dillo, and anyway, I said to him, look, I think it's safe if we go out. We'll go out in the trench. And I said, first man out, turn right, second man out, left, right, spread out along the trench. Here we'll get somebody, if something happens, we get 5 men. Anyway, without that, I said, well, let's go. And Don stepped out in front of me. And when we got up to where it went in the main trench like that, Don turned right, I turned left, and the next shot from this, it turned out to be a rocket launcher, 5.7 rocket launcher. It hit the wall just above his head there and went off, and it blew me sideways. I picked this up off the ground here, and he was laying on the trench floor. And when I went up, he was dead. There was not a mark on him. The blast had just killed him outright. So even though my examination said he was dead, but I was a bit dazed, and I went to get a medic. I just told the others to keep separated, you know. And I got the medic, and then I think, if I remember correctly, I must have got a bit hysterical then because I was very tired, and I just wanted to, I remember saying I wanted to get at a 9mm sniper. That's the artillery. I was sick and tired of being hit by guns and not being able to fire a shot at them, see? Even though we went looking for them. Yeah. And anyway, they told me they gave me a morphine needle and settled me down. And anyway, I went back on duty again, and the trouble was the next patrol I went on, I started to suffer a lot of pains in the legs here, and if I lay on an outpost for say 3 hours, you couldn't get up, I couldn't walk, there was too much pain in the legs, and I was becoming a liability to my section and to myself. So I decided to go to the RAP and see if I could get some painkillers. So I walked down off the hill, and when you go out on a patrol, you've got 50 rounds and 3 grenades and a balaclava hat. No tin hats, no vests. I never wore a vest in my life. Mm-hmm. And anyway,
So what happened to you? Did you leave Korea then?
No, they did. They sent me back when I got down there. The first day they said, the doctor said, come back tomorrow. And I got rather abusive because I thought I've got to walk up the hill again with all the gear and walk back again. And anyway, I said, I don't think I'll effing will bother. And of course the sergeant said, what did you say? And I turned on him and I said, you heard what was said. And I wasn't like that normally.
I mean, we need to concentrate on the major events. So I want to, when did you leave Korea?
When did I leave Korea?
Yeah.
I left Korea just before Christmas. I went back I was evacuated
52? When did you leave Korea? 52 Christmas?
52 Christmas, yeah. 1952 in Christmas, around about the 22nd, 23rd. Mm-hmm. And I was evacuated to Seoul and to the Indian Field Ambulance before that, and then to Seoul, and then to General Hospital in Korea, in Japan. Mm-hmm. And
were you wounded at the time? Were you wounded?
No, I was lucky I never got a mark on me.
Yeah, but why were you in the hospital?
I was in the hospital because I couldn't walk.
Oh. What happened?
No, my legs...
Because of the pain?
Well, they said when I went back the second time, when they told me to come back the next day, when I left, I started to walk up the hill, and I was that exhausted. I woke up 4 hours later, asleep in the snow. I'd been just laying down. Fell asleep while I was walking.
So, luckily you were not wounded, but you were not able to... You had a serious pain, so then you were discharged.
Had my ears blown out, but unless there's blood, if a stone flies up and cuts you, you're wounded. Doesn't have to be a bit of metal.
So you're very lucky.
Yeah, but you don't see those wounds. Yeah. And when I got flattened out, it did something to my spine. They said that They evacuated me with a sprained spinal column and pierced eardrums. So later on they changed that definition to wounded.
Yeah.
See, but anyway, I had a lot of trouble with DVA when I come back. They said they'd lost all my records, Department of Veterans Affairs, and it wasn't until 1978 the Freedom of Information came in, and I applied through that, and they found all my records. You know, they just miraculously turned up.
So, have you been back to Korea after that?
Yes, I went
time?
back.
When was it?
About let me think. Trying to think back. Must be. I've been back twice. No, 3 times. I went back once. That was about. Must have been 15 years ago.
Okay, so it was 2000.
2000, yeah.
21st century, right?
Yeah, because I made that thing in 2003, and I'd been to Korea then, by 2003. So it was around about 2000, and I went over there, and we had our box was next to the president's box in where the stadium is. You know, the big stadium. I don't know when that was built, but it was brand new, and we spent our 3 weeks there, and I was amazed because
3 weeks.
No, 3 weeks, a week. Sorry, a week. 5 days, because, well, I remember now, we went from province to province.
Yeah.
Every night we went to a different province.
Right. When you went back to Korea in 2003, how did you feel?
Well, I was actually amazed, because when I left Korea, there was one bridge over the river, and it was busted. When I went back, then they had 18 bridges or something and 6 tunnels, and I couldn't get over how, and I'd already known how I'd followed you a bit because being in the Veterans Affairs, veterans organisations here, and I've got quite a library at home on Korean War, and so I know a bit about the fact there that you've reached a great height from the world's industrialised nation, and you did it all under a threat of only about 20 miles away of a madman. And I thought it was actually amazing, and how you went on with your life so complacently, put it that way. And I've been amazed ever since. And since the Korean veterans down the Gold Coast have been so good to our organisations that I think I can never repay the gratitude I feel towards the South Korea, because so they keep thinking they owe me. I don't. I think that boots on the other foot sometimes, because I appreciate very much what the South Korean government's done for the Australian veterans here in Australia. Really do, and a lot of our veterans feel the same way. I think I could speak for them on that. But it was a terrific war, because when I went to Busan the first time, when I landed there, the first thing I saw on the streets was, we went down the streets and it was just the little shops, and all the rest was wreckage and a slum. And there was mud on the beach there, and the mud flats we crossed, And anyway, I saw a little girl, and she was about 3-year-old, and all she had on was a little singlet, white singlet, dirty, and on her back she had a brother, and she was sitting down amongst she had a big cardboard carton that the Kellogg's cornflakes used to come from the American Army. It was about that square, that high, and she was sitting in there, and she had 2 old ration cans, and because I was in a truck and we went past, but that's what I saw, and it stayed in my memory, and I thought, I hope to God I never ever see that situation in our country, because I think the refugees suffered so terribly. Children didn't know who their parents were, where, if they were alive. Well, a lot of you still don't know. Your sisters and brothers can't talk to you, and I'll be very happy if I live long enough to see unification of Korea in peace. because I think that I know your history, a lot of your history, back to 4,000 years ago. And there was a king you had, and he was a very, very good man, and he set up lots of the governments and that. And what was his name again?
Sejong.
Yeah.
But let's focus on the war that you fought for. Had you thought that? Had you imagined that Korea would become like this today when you left Korea in 1953?
Well, I don't think that a lot of people say we never won. My answer to that is that look at South Korea.
I mean, did you think that Korea would become like this today when you left Korea?
No. I didn't know because I didn't see much of Korea except the trench line. And the time we went in and around the Chinese lines, that down across the river and that. But I didn't see anything apart from when I came back from the rest camp and I saw all the refugees and Papa Stone with his big hat on and sitting by little fires on the side of the road, and it was frosty and cold. And I remember there was a book I read and made a very big impact on me. It was written by an English journalist called Reginald Thompson, and it was called Cry Korea. And if you ever get a copy of that and read it, you'll see what Korea was like, really. And there was an Australian correspondent, Harry Gordon, and Harry Gordon was a member of our club down here.
You said Cry Korea?
Pardon?
What is the title of the book?
Cry, C-R-Y, you know, Cry,
Yeah.
Korea.
Uh-huh.
That's the title. And the name of the author was Reginald Thompson. He was a British correspondent for one of the British papers. And they went up and they were with the battalions and with the British division. It wasn't a Commonwealth division, it was a brigade. And later on become a Commonwealth division when the Canadians joined and everything.
So by next year, 2020, it's going to be 70th anniversary of the Korean War. It's never been replaced with the peace treaty.
I know.
We are still technically at war. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that the world is very slack in their knowledge of the Korean War. They really are, because you talk to young people nowadays. I forgot to tell you, I joined up again in the reserve forces in Australia in 1975, and I served 15 years in Royal Australian Electrical Mechanical Engineers because I was a former mechanic then. And I think that we don't do enough here. A lot of people might disagree with me, but we are too lax. We're too easy, too relaxed in lots of ways, and we don't. You've got to be a little bit harder sometimes because you're dealing with a hard enemy. And I don't like the way the situation is at the moment because it looks to me as though Russia, I've followed them a lot. Russia is doing a lot of work in the background down in Africa, South America, and they've got conferences going on now, China and North Korea, and they're getting a lot palier. And then he flies to Russia. So I think myself that if America gets much weaker, they will make another push. I really do. It worries me because I'd hate to see it break out in another world war.
So you have done a lot of research about the Korean War. What about here in Australia? Do they teach about Korean War in the high school, in history class?
I don't think so.
Why
As
not?
I said, well, I never went. I went to work at 12, so I did junior English when I was 39, just before, when I got married. I did junior English, and I did mathematics because I studied.
Why we don't teach about it? Why we don't teach about Korean War here in Australia?
I don't know. Actually, I must check my son-in-law, not my son-in-law, my grandson. He didn't know much about it, and when I was in the Army Reserve, that's what I was going to say. Sometimes on Anzac Day when I'd wear my ribbons, and he'd say, "What's that for?" I said, "It's the Korean War." He says, "When was that?" I said, 1950 started. I was there 52. Oh, he said, "Oh, I wasn't even born then." And they don't know, and they're rather ignorant of the fact too that our units played a very, for a small group, we distinguished ourselves in front of the whole world, the Navy, the Army and the Air Force, particularly the Air Force, because the Air Force stopped the North Korean tanks with the rockets. Mm-hmm. They wiped them out.
So, you didn't know much about Korea before, and now you've been to Korea 3 times. What is Korea to you personally?
Korea is a beautiful country. I didn't see none of that. As I said, all I saw was a 227 in front of me every morning, and it was just not a blade of grass on it, no trees, just polarised hill. It was like plowed up. And we didn't move around much. At night, daytime, we were either, when we come back off a patrol, we cleaned out any damage from shell fire in the trenches, and some of us were detailed to go back and dig or reinforce the rear positions, the next line of defence. And we didn't get a lot of sleep, and we got one hot meal a day if you did, but most people couldn't be bothered with the hot meal. They just said, "Oh, I want to just go to sleep." And after a couple of months, you get you get like a zombie to a certain extent, You're tired, you're very tired. We were. I'm not speaking for the whole unit because I'm only speaking for my section because we were undermanned. And that's why I went back that time, because I didn't want to leave another man gone and 2 more that left that section with practically nobody.
But my question is, what is Korea to you now, personally?
Personally, in what way do I like Korea?
Whatever you think way.
I admire Korea. I really do. I admire the Korean people. I think you've got a lot of stamina and a lot of work in you. And I just wish that you could have more peace there, not have the threat that's hanging over you all the time. I often wonder if we had the same threat like somebody in Bribie Island who was threatening to drop a nuclear bomb on us. How we'd react. But we don't know here. We don't. Apart from the Japanese bombing Darwin, the southern cities don't know. And the children and that today don't know. We don't have any commitment like you have in Korea, where each young man does 2 years and young lady do 2 years. And when I was in Korea, I couldn't help but notice that all you people, all slim, because you work hard. Here, people don't work as hard as they used to in my day. I was always getting told, what are you trying to prove, Harry? I had it in the army and had it when I went to work. And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, you work twice as hard as any other man." I said, "I don't think so." I said, "I just enjoy doing my job. It's a challenge. I want to get finished and then I want to go home. I don't want to muck about." And I really think that that's what I admire most in the Korean people, is their work ethic. And that's the only way, as I said to my grandchildren, study, get the knowledge, and worry about the fun games afterwards. Because if you have the fun games now, the world will go by and leave you.
So tell me about the impact of war upon your life after you come back from Korea.
Well, it didn't worry me in the fact that I had bad dreams. I remember things. When I remember them, the first time I had a bad dream was actually about a fortnight ago.
4 nights ago?
Fortnight, 2 weeks. 2 weeks ago. Apart from that
was first time for you to have a bad.
Yeah, because I'm a bit of a. I believe that if you come to a road and it's got a bridge that's been blown out or broken, don't muck around with it. Go down. Actually, before you get there, you want to know whether you can go down another road. So when you get there, you go down that road. The same as my marriage. And my ex-girlfriend said, that things were different. I just said, oh, well, that's the way that, and I travelled 12,000 kilometres, miles, and I just said, oh, well, that's the way the cookie crumbles. And I said, I'll see you. And I went to walk away, and she stopped in amazement. She said, when am I going to see you again? And I thought, this is crazy. But coming back to, I think, your main question was on Korea, I just loved Korea when I saw the way your school teachers bring all the children to the cemetery at Busan, and they tell the children about the history of the Korean War and how the men that died from different nations came from a long way over the sea to fight for Korea. And another good friend of mine, he lives in Bulawila, he's still alive, one of my mates, he was a SIG, the bloke that carried me out, Doris Vanatelli. And he's the sort of bloke that, he's like me, you know. And he also said, you're a good man, Harry. I said, well, you're a good man, man. Because he looks after his wife, and she's got dementia. See, so there's good men, and in the army there was good diggers and there was bad diggers. You can't say every digger's a hero or anything like that. I never wanted to be a hero. Heroes get you killed. I wanted to survive and come home. So I just put out of my mind everything else but the fact that when I'll just get this thing finished, and I didn't get a chance to get it finished. The only shot I fired, now this might sound very embarrassing, but I wrote about it in a book because it was true, and you can't beat the facts, was I lifted the toilet seat on our toilet on the hill, and I fired my .303 down there to make sure it worked after 2 weeks, and it worked. So I just unloaded it, and I knew I had gun that fired.
I would like to wrap this interview with your special message to the Korean people. Do you have any message to them?
I just think to the Korean people, I thank you very much for all the gratitude you've shown to particularly Australians. I can't speak for Americans, but I know that you do. That I think that just be assured that we really appreciate having been of some service to keep your country. At least you never lost the war. Never say you lost the war. You won it, because I got a photograph in a book there of the Australians leading the victory parade in New York. That's how much the Americans thought of us. We led the parade as a digger, a soldier, and so on. I'll show you afterwards.
In New York?
In New York. And
the Korean War?
We led the parade for the victory parade.
Victory parade for what?
For victory in Korea.
Korea?
Yeah, because we went into Korea initially to throw the North Koreans back from the 38th parallel, which we did. So therefore, we achieved what we went to do. We didn't stop the North Koreans from being there, but we achieved the mission that we had. And MacArthur made a lot of mistakes and could have turned it into a bigger mess than what we wanted. But you needed a lot of steady heads and a little bit of diplomacy. But I say, rest assured that I personally think a lot and admire the people of Korea a tremendous lot, because you, as I say, your work ethic, and that with me goes down a long way, because I'm still working.
You shouldn't stop. Thank you so much, Andy.
You're all right.
It's a great interview, and thank you for sharing your stories.
I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And if you want any more bits of it, say, have a look at or you can say to them, people in Korea can have a look on the archives. Screen Australia.
Sure.
Herry Pooley, 1020, and I'll probably get bored.